This is today's state board.
Oh, yeah. Gotta print that up. What's the matter?
I've got the DMV reports up.
Oh,
Guess what? There were 173 yesterday.
oh, yeah, there's a lot.
Good.
I'll try to help you out there. I'm gonna do that.
Good morning, all. I'd like to call the Governance meeting to order. It might be me. Okay, I need a motion to accept the minutes as mailed on July 20th, 2020.
I'll make a motion.
Who's that, Paul?
Yes.
Motion by Paul. Do I have a second? Matt? Sure. Matt seconded. Any omissions, corrections? All in favor? Aye. First order of business is board elections.
Hello, we're here, Leslie and Jeff.
Leslie and Jeff, how you doing? So, you were going to give us a sort of an overview of the general election, and I think there were some other questions we had for you, but why don't you start off with your overview of what you see as problems and issues for the election season and the challenges we have to meet, so we get a better understanding of what we're in for.
I'm just gonna give you a little overview of the presidential primary. We consolidated poll sites for the June primary. We had one poll site per town. We had absentee-wise, we had 2,436 absentees requested. So we issued that many. We received 1,878 absentees back. As of right now, well, we had a total county turnout was 28%. I think, early voting, we had 33 people.
Yeah, 33 people early voted.
So 33 people came to our office, early voted. Right now, we're looking at, for this November election, right now, we already have over 1,000 applications requested for absentees as of right now for November. We can, early voting, you'll be able to, it starts 10 days before the election, which will be here at 1153 Burgoyne Avenue. We're gonna have to have every poll site open for November. And it'll be all 26 sites that will be open for November. And the poll sites will be open 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay, what we're doing to, I'll say combat COVID, if you want to call it that, to each poll site, as we did in June, we are sending out plexiglass barriers, so there's a barrier between our inspectors and the voters. We have disinfectant cleaner and paper towels that are going out, so after a voter, everything will get wiped down. The stylus that marks the iPad when they sign in, our ballot marking pens, the privacy folders, and the voting area. We are also sending out masks and face shields, gloves, hand sanitizers, and blue tape that will be put on the floor for your 6-foot social distancing markings. So that's what we're doing there. Actually, by having the June primary as small as it was kind of good, so we are taking, what we did in June and applying it for November in the line of precautions. We feel we're going to have a lot of applications for absentee ballots. I mean, more than we've ever had, just because everybody wants them now. They don't want to go to the poll sites. But on the flip side of it, they're still fearful that we aren't going to get them because of the mail. We field questions here. I mean, all four of us are just answering the phone constantly for applications and questions about, are my ballots going to count? Are they going to get to you? What about the mail? So we're trying to reassure the voter also. So that's what we're doing here. Questions?
Brian was first.
So, first of all, there was a new executive order yesterday, and you've got to send, postcards? We have to send something to let them know.
You want me to run through them?
Yeah, I think you need to run through them, but before I forget, the one question I had, you said you had 1,000 already that are going to get ballots that have applied for absentee ballots.
Correct.
So I guess what I was trying to tie into that is we're keeping track of that, so they're not going to get a postcard telling them they can get an absentee ballot or a card or whatever you got to have, because
well, the postcard has to have more information on it than just that.
Yeah, we still have to, doesn't matter, we still have to send all the postcards out.
Oh my God! After all that,
We haven't heard yet, though.
We're getting an absentee ballot.
Hold on. Okay, go ahead, Leslie.
We haven't heard if we have to send out to the inactive. There's about 3,000 something inactive voters, and in June, we had to send them, the inactive voters, plus the voters lists, the applications. We have not been told we have to do inactive voters with this mailing.
We still haven't heard anything yet on that.
So what is in the mailing that, if you already are getting an absentee ballot, what information is in that mailing that they need on top of that? I guess that's why I'm wondering why they need both.
Well, I think Chris will answer that in a minute.
Dates, we still don't know the dates.
We have a conference call with the state again today in 20 minutes, so we'll know more hopefully then. But Chris should probably run down, because we haven't been notified of what Chris has yet.
Okay, so with that, the governor signed 5 executive orders yesterday. Well, sorry, let me rephrase that. The governor announced 5 executive orders. As of this morning, I don't believe they are posted. I'm actually checking right now. Okay, he did post them. So, the summary of the executive orders from yesterday is the following. The first extends the temporary illness provision. And what that means basically is because it was determined that he couldn't do all mail voting through executive order, what he did was he modified election law to make the threat of COVID-19 count as a temporary illness, which is already defined in statute as a acceptable reason for receiving an absentee ballot. So the first executive order, the first provision of the large executive order that was signed yesterday extends that provision through as long as he can. The second one is what Mr. Campbell was referring to. That mandates a county board of elections send a mailing to all would-be voters, notifying them of the deadlines and methods to request an absentee ballot. I will parse that executive order language later. The understanding I had from the release from the governor yesterday is that it says it has to be mailed to everybody. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's likely inactive voters. And to Mr. Campbell's point, it's likely voters who have already requested an absentee ballot. Okay, the third one is seemingly innocuous, but this is actually a relatively big cost, and that is directing the Board of Elections to promulgate a new envelope to eliminate confusion about where to sign for a ballot to be counted. The problem for us is that we already have all the envelopes. And I think the State Board of Elections has already given guidance that we're not allowed to put a sticker or anything over what we already have printed to try to clarify. So we are going to have to buy all new and print all brand new envelopes, which is a not insignificant cost. The next one is require all Board of Elections to take necessary steps to expedite the counting of ballots so that county is ready to begin ASAP. There was then further clarification that was sent out last night, and the devil is always in the details. And what he sent out last night was that all absentee ballots must be counted 48 hours after the election. So to the discussion that we had at the full board meeting last Friday, if they already have 1,000 absentee applications, and they being our elections commissioners, feel that there will be a very high demand for absentee ballots, there's really, unfortunately, no way for them to comply with this new executive order with the 48-hour timeline without that high-speed scanner. So I agree with the board. I don't want to spend that much money on a high-speed scanner, but otherwise there's no way we're going to be able to comply with this 2-day deadline. And then the final one is, and perhaps this is a glimmer of hope, direct all county boards of elections to report staffing plans and any needs for additional staff to ensure a fair, complete, accurate vote to the state BOE by September 20th. Now, again, in the subsequent guidance that came out last night from the second floor, there was talk about, instead of what staff was needed, but what staff and or other assistance. So I think our submission to the State Board of Elections would include the purchases that were authorized by the board on Friday, and say that we needed to make those capital investments in order to be able to comply with this, and then hope that perhaps there is a small glimmer of hope that the state will help at least with that. So that is the rough summary of the executive orders. Does anybody have any questions on that? Okay, and I'm actually looking at the executive order language right now, and it says every voter that is in active and inactive status
That's so stupid.
shall be mailed a thing. Yeah, so we do have to send it to everybody.
Okay.
Matt?
So Leslie, I have a series of questions for you. So on election day, I can go.
Hang on, who am I speaking with?
Matt Hicks?
Oh, okay. Matt.
On election day, I can go to my polling place and vote, correct?
Correct.
Within 10 days prior to the election, I can come to your office and basically vote in person there under the early voting situation, right?
Correct.
I can make an application to you for an absentee ballot that you will send to me, and I can fill it out and I can bring that to you, correct?
Yes. Or mail it back.
Okay, and so the next option is I can do that and mail it back, and that has to be either delivered or postmarked to you by when?
The day of election.
Okay, so I can deliver it to you that day, or I can post, as long as it's postmarked on November 3rd and it gets to you, it'll be counted, correct?
November 3rd, yes.
Okay, so I have multiple ways of being able to vote. And I guess the only question I had left was, if I send an application for an absentee ballot and you send me an absentee ballot, and then I decide to either vote in person with you or vote in person at my polling place, you have a cross-reference or a checks and balance to then invalidate any absentee ballot that I might have?
Yes.
Okay, great. Then we got lots of options here then. Thank you.
And even if you sent it in and decided to vote on election day,
You can still do that.
you can still do that.
Well,
But the rule of vote early, vote often doesn't apply because we catch that within the system.
And which one is invalidated?
The one that you vote on the machine is the one that stays. The absentee
Doesn't get open.
does not get opened.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's gonna be a lot of work to review the ballots against the absentee ballots you got versus the poll books, right?
That's why, well, that's within the NTS system that is our voter registration. That's why that system is so valuable.
We upload
because
we upload the voter history through the electronic poll books, and then that's how we can catch we double check everything.
Okay. 8.5? Unmute, please.
Thank you, Dave. Somebody please double check my math. If you double the number of absentee ballots coming in from the primary, you're gonna call it 5,000 absentee ballots, okay? And you have
Yeah.
48 hours to do it. That's 2 work days at 12 hours a day for election thing. The way my math comes out is that's 3.5 ballots this high-speed scanner will scan every minute. That doesn't include, because the high-speed scanner doesn't open the envelopes, collate them, stack them. It just scans it. So we need a high-speed scanner to count 3.5 ballots a minute based on 2 12-hour days.
Well, let's look at it this way. It took Jeff and I 34 hours to do 1,700 ballots in June.
What's wrong with getting paid something out of the day?
Okay.
So, but we have no idea how to anticipate how many absentee ballots were to come in. There could be
We don't
3,400,
even know.
30,000.
We don't know how many we're gonna get back.
30,000.
Oh. Pardon?
Why not 100,000?
30,000?
Because we don't have that many registered voters.
It's a silly argument.
How many registered voters we have?
37,000.
Like 35, 36,000.
Okay. Matt?
Leslie, when do you have to have submitted an application for an absentee ballot by?
The week before. Well, unless you come here. You can get an absentee ballot in our office
You can apply up to the day,
the day before.
Day before in person.
But it's in person. The last postmark is a week before.
All right, you have to excuse me for being a little confused on that. So if I want to vote absentee, could I come get an application from you now?
Yep. And that's how we've got those 1,000 already.
And how much longer do I have to request that application?
Till the day, request it.
Right here, absentee.
Hang on.
Apply in person November 2nd. Last date of postmark is October 27th.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, so I have to request it prior to October 27th?
Have it mailed.
Well, to mail it, you would have, to mail it back, it would have, to us, it'd have to be postmarked no later than October 27th.
And that would be
You can come right into the office right up to November 2nd, the date. You can apply in person right up to the 2nd.
Okay, so I'm sorry for being obtuse about this. I'm a little confused. I want to talk about the application, not the absentee ballot.
Oh, wait.
Yeah, that's
How
what we,
late can I fill out an application in order to get one?
that's what that is, for that, to come in with, apply for the application to get the ballot.
The day before election, you can come into our office, fill out the application, give it to us, and we turn around and give you an absentee ballot that you can take home and do,
Or do right here.
or do right here.
Okay. And I have to request it, if we're going to do it all by mail, prior to October 27th?
Yes.
Okay.
So, you done that? I'm just trying to follow that timeline, because that confuses me.
I just want to get it clear, 'cause this is being recorded and people are going to watch this. I want to make sure they all know what the options are, and I want to make sure that everyone's clear on this. Go ahead, Dave.
So if I mail it on October 27th, postmarked October 27th, it would get here theoretically by the 28th, 29th, or 30th, depending on the turnaround. So they might even get their ballot until the day it's supposed to be postmarked on or after.
Okay, but there's,
Follow my logic?
yeah, yes, we know, and and the state has gone around and round and round on these dates also.
That's why hopefully people don't wait till the last minute, or they can come in and early vote. If they come into the office, they can vote right here and early vote.
Yeah, I realize that, but, you know,
also, you can take, somebody or you can take your absentee ballot on the day of election on the day of election and have it postmarked that day, or you can take it to the poll site and they will put it in an envelope that comes back to us, or you can drop it off at our office on the day of election.
Okay, we get that. Ryan?
So, this is gonna get very busy that last, what is it? Is there 10 days early voting, is that right?
Yes, 9 days.
9 actual days.
But it starts 10 days before. You
Okay.
can't early vote on Monday.
It starts on October 24th and it goes to Sunday, November 1st.
So, just in thinking of how busy that time period is, if someone comes in to get a ballot within those 10 days, an absentee ballot, would you not direct them to just go vote instead of go through all the extra work? I mean,
You don't,
Oh, yeah, we would,
you don't have the ability to.
I know you don't have the ability to tell them, but I would think you would suggest that the machine's right there, vote.
Yeah, yes, and we would,
We
but,
would suggest it if they would like to, that we say they could early vote if they wanted to.
but there's other things involved with, absentee ballots, like you can have somebody, say your wife is sick, she can sign the absentee ballot application and designate you to pick up the ballot for her. So you can bring that into us, we can give it to you because she has requested that you pick it up, and then you can take it home to her.
Yeah, it depends on the circumstance, that's all.
Okay, I'm just thinking how busy it is. It just seems foolish to be passing out absentee ballots when the person's there and can vote, but.
Actually, believe it or not, Monday is pretty easy around here because the trucks have already gone out with all the stuff at 7 o'clock in the morning, and the rest of the day is a breathing time before 2.
I wouldn't count on that this year.
No, this year it's already starting.
Any other questions for the Board of Elections? Any other information you'd like to tell us, Leslie or Jeff?
Not that I can think of.
No. Don't vote out.
Is there any thought that with this new process, we may need additional staff?
We're not sure. We have brought in some inspectors to help us with early voting, mostly on the last day, where we have to end up packing machines and everything after early voting ends at 2 o'clock.
And uploading the poll votes, well, it's usually just that day, if anything.
And we have some inspectors that have said, just call us, even if it's, give me an hour time frame, we can come in and help. And I'm afraid that's what it's going to be, is we're so overwhelmed that we need the help, because we don't know what we're gonna get.
Okay, Matt.
So just to recap, Leslie, if I'm concerned about this whole situation, my two best options, if I don't want to go to the polls on polling day because of, crowds and things like that, I can come in to vote with you 10 days before the election at my convenience, and my vote will obviously be counted pretty easily.
You vote right on the machine.
Yeah, and if I want to vote absentee, it's in my best interest to contact you as soon as possible, so you can send me the application. You'll get it back as soon as possible so that you'll send me out my absentee ballot the first day they're available to be sent out. Those are the two easiest ways to make sure that my vote counts, correct?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So we would suggest that Washington County residents do those things, one of those two things.
Yeah. Just a little bit on absentee. The ones that we we're going to start sending ballots out the very end of September. And of course, we do all the printing here and everything, so we print on demand, and they're all going to be going out the end of September.
The military and federal have to go out first. Then we do the perms and so on, right, civilian perms right after the military, but the federal military and UCAVA have to go out first.
And then we'll work on the rest of them, and once those 1,000, I'll say, are out, what comes in every day, we process those days and get them out in the mail the next day.
Okay.
So absentee is an ongoing thing. Also, you can download the application off the website, and our early voting hours are
on the website.
Are on the website.
Anyone else? Thank you very much for your time, and we hope it gets not too much harder.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Real property.
Hi, Dave. Can you hear me?
Laura.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Perfect, okay. First thing on my agenda is regarding a property that's located at 43 Derby Street that's currently owned by Washington County. I received a letter from GA Bovee Fuels, who owns the property next door to that. And they would like to place an offer on the property to purchase the property. It is was taken for unpaid taxes back many years ago. Back in 1995, there was some, this was the former site of some oil tanks, so there was some ground cleanup back then. We have not done anything with this property since that time. It's currently owned by Washington County. They would like to, they presented an offer of $4,000. It is adjacent to their fuel company, which is located at 43 Derby Street. And they'd like to purchase that property. So I'm bringing it before the committee. I've also forwarded this letter prior to Chris and Roger and Al for, in case they had any input regarding this situation.
Questions for Laura? Brian?
I don't know if it's for Laura or who it'd be for, but this hasn't been sold before because of a liability, is that the case?
Correct.
That's why it hasn't gone through the sale.
Right.
So now is it?
Or it may have gone through a sale, nobody wanted it. Those are both possibilities. We've had this for, I think we've had this since before I got here.
Almost 30 years.
Yeah, we've had this property. We've had this property for quite some time. 1995 was when we did some DPW did some cleanup down there.
So if we actually sold this, it would go back on the tax roll and we'd live happily ever after? Or is there any liability that I'm missing by selling this back to them and being done with it?
There's always a tail, because any pollution case.
But that's there whether we give sell back to them or not.
It's there whether we're there or not. Being another owner always helps more people to party, in this case.
Solution to pollution is solution.
Helps.
After 30 years of a solution without the solution, I'm ready to see it go.
Yeah, I would recommend the board move forward.
I'm not on the committee, so I can't make the motion, but I would make this happen.
If we sell it, and they want to do anything about the property, so they do a phase one, probably phase two, and phase three, and they'll be responsible for all the cleanup, wouldn't they?
Not my problem if I sell it.
Okay.
They'd be the owner.
I'll entertain a motion to sell that. Dana? Pat?
Doesn't all real property have to go through auction?
Not in the case of tax properties. Tax properties can be sold pursuant to the board's decision.
Say that again,
They're the
Roger.
only one. Tax properties are exempt from the requirement that public property go through public auction. There's a specific exemption in that section of the county law for tax properties. We've conveyed tax properties to specific, we've conveyed them to the IDA. We've conveyed them to specific buyers that had specific plans. So that they're exempt. This would be exempt because we took it for taxes.
Okay.
Okay. I got a motion on that? Motion by Lester. Do I have a second?
Paul Ferguson.
Paul Ferguson. All right, any other questions or discussion? Al?
Just a point of clarity, and Deb can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the motion is to send it to finance.
Like your me.
Let's go to finance.
Yes.
I have no.
It should.
Sure.
I will send it to finance anyways. So that was your motion, wasn't it, Lester?
Yes. Motion.
Matt first.
Do we have any information on whether this is a reasonable amount? I don't want to get to the weeds on this, but if it's seems to be as reasonable, because I don't know the property, I don't know how small
I
it is.
can-
If it's
I
reasonable,
can-
I'd go all for it, but if it's,
Well, Matt, you have to get into the weeds, because that's about all it is right now. We send crews over there every couple of years just because the jungle is.
how big is the parcel?
Taking neighbors. It's probably 2 oil trucks side by side.
Oh.
It was a filling station.
A small piece.
Oh, okay.
Series of, storage tanks that they would fill the trucks from. The facility was the old oil company, and which GA Bow is in now, it's across the street, is where they kept their tanks.
Gotcha. Thanks.
And the current
No, I
assessed
haven't.
value that the current assessed value the assessor has on the roll for the town of Kingsbury is $4,000, which is what their offer is.
Dan Shaw, you were next.
Yeah, this question is for Roger. About 4 years ago, I bought a piece of property from the State Canal Corp that ran through my property. And they were afraid of pollution, the Canal Corp was. And when I got done, they issued me a deed in a document, 32 pages, that said I can never come back and claim anything against them for what's there. Is there any way you could copy that when you do this deed? So that there is nothing that ever comes back towards us, because the state was pretty confident they're off the hook when I bought that.
Well, the people are gonna come back on us are the state, not the owner, and that's probably why, they didn't wanna be involved in the federal cleanup, especially in light of the fact where you're located. I think they're afraid of EPA. We could ask the people to sign a release, but it's, in all likelihood, if something needs to be done there, it's going to be the federal government or the state government that comes to us and says something needs to be done there under CERCLA, and then they're gonna round up all owners in the chain of title, which is why we don't get in the chain of title anymore in these things. This was before we had our policy that we don't take things that are contaminated. So I could ask for a release, but I'm just saying that they're probably not our problem.
Yeah. Al?
Matt's earlier question, the property is 42 by 90.
Any other questions?
Already.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. You want to write off some taxes also, Laura?
Yes, this is a parcel that, a trailer that was in a trailer park. The prior owner had some veterans exemptions, so the parcel was subbed out, 8801, which we normally call it. And so the owner was allowed to get the exemption. Since then, the owner no longer lives there, and the parcel had gone without some unpaid taxes for 1 year. Very small amount.
How much was a very small amount?
I don't have that number. Al, do you know what that?
What's the parcel, Laura?
216.1-2-18.8810. Excuse me.
Well, she's looking, any other questions? We're all looking, any other questions, or?
What are we doing Tuesday?
This is
Writing
the,
off tax.
so this is one that would have been headed to auction, but we can't enforce on a trailer because it's personal properties. The current amount due is $2,543.14, but $557 of that is interest. So the total due right now is $2,543.14. So what you would see at finance is a resolution to 1138 the parcel.
Any further questions or comments? Can I get a motion to move this to finance? Moved by Matt, second by Paul Ferguson. Any other further questions? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. School taxes.
Sure, we're working on school taxes right now as we speak. We have had a lot of changes in the STAR exemption over the last few years with the governor's changes since 2015, actually, that people, anybody that purchased property after 2015, go to the STAR credit check or check instead of having the STAR exemption on their property. Since then, he's made changes to the to the STAR exemption. If you earn over 500,000, you can't receive it. If you earn between 250,000 to 500, you have to go to the STAR credit program. This last year, his push was if you had delinquent taxes on your property, you would need to pay your taxes or you were not going to be receiving your STAR exemption. So with the cooperation of Al and his reports that he could download from his collection system, he was able to very nicely provide to New York State some reports for us, which made it easier on our end to locate all these people that are not going to have a STAR exemption on their bill. I'm not sure if that pushed along people, making their payments on their delinquent taxes or not, if there was an influx, but we did have a lot of calls in our office, people calling because they received a letter from New York State saying they're going to lose their STAR exemption unless they paid their taxes. What do? Our response was pay your taxes, but there are phone numbers on those forms that you receive from the New York State Department of Tax and Finance to make sure your taxes, you do get them paid and, so that you can now register for the STAR check. So anybody that is going to lose it because they had delinquent taxes at one point will now receive the STAR check. They won't receive the exemption going forward. We had approximately 138 owners in New York State, in Washington County, that had to lose their STAR exemption on their school tax bill that we're currently printing. Hopefully they will get their taxes paid up soon so that they will be switched to the STAR check program and they will receive the STAR check in the future. We will be downloading another unpaid file, I think it's in October, to New York State so that those people can get on board with the credit, the STAR credit check. And versus having their $500 savings on their approximately $500 savings on their tax bill. I really don't understand it. Why would you, penalize somebody that's delinquent in taxes by taking away an exemption they're entitled to? But these are our holders in Washington County. So in case you hear anything from any of your constituents, I just wanted to pass this information along. They are receiving letters. They are kept up to date on the information, and they are supposed to contact Tax and Finance regarding any of this. I don't want to tell you my the real words, but it's kind of hard to take 138 people and remove their STAR exemption. The state is mandating we do that. And now they're losing that money off the bill. So hopefully they can get those delinquent taxes paid so that they can get on the STAR check program in the future. But I just wanted to give you a heads up in case you heard of any people in your town that, may have been complaining regarding this. It's unfortunate. It's just, unfortunately, there's other areas where they find that there's a lot of misuse of the STAR. So that's what their course of action is through New York State. So I just wanted to give you an update on some of that that's going on.
Matt?
Laura, is this just for people who are delinquent on their 2020 taxes, or does it go back several years, or how does it all work?
It goes back, and Al sent them 19.
But if I paid my 18s and 19s, but I'm delinquent on my 20s, am I on this list?
No, nope.
This is only for people who have been delinquent for how long?
A year or more.
They're 19s then, they didn't pay their 19s.
Correct, correct.
And so if I'm delinquent and I get my letter and then I want to get off the delinquent list, I come in and pay my taxes to Al, what's my next move to try to get my STAR exemption or STAR credit back?
So Al had given us two different reports that we forwarded on to the state. So it's a different timetable. They looked at it to begin with, and then they got an updated report after the letters went out. Al's system would be updated with people that had made payments.
Do they have to actually do something though after they paid out to get back in the STAR program? Or they're automatically enrolled when they pay their taxes?
No, they would be put into the Star Credit Check Program now, and they would get a check instead of the exemption on their tax bill going forward.
Automatically.
Yes. The state is in contact with these people to complete the information. The state is
Good
also,
question.
I just got an email. Oh, I'll have something.
Al?
I just wanted to follow up with Matt's question because it's part of what makes it worse for me. So basically, if somebody owes 2020 and 2019, they've lost their STAR exemption. And in order to get it back, they've got to get the 19s paid, which means they got to pay the 2020s first. So now you've taken somebody who's already a year behind in taxes. They have to pay both years or lose their STAR exemption. So you've taken somebody who's already in, for whatever reason, behind in their taxes, and you're going to remove their STAR exemption on September 1st and give them a bigger school bill. So you've taken somebody who's already having a problem coming up with the money for their taxes and increasing their taxes. This is extremely counterintuitive to me. The only thing that makes sense is Laura has just confirmed what one of my suspicions was, that he'll gladly welcome you back into the new program. This was to get people out of the old program and into the new program. I hate to be cynical, but it feels, I was afraid that was going to happen, and Lauren just confirmed that that's going to happen. So, you know, the cynic in me is like, yeah, nice job, Governor, thank you. But it's counterintuitive because you've taken somebody who's in the hole and given them a bigger hole. I don't really understand it.
Okay, someone else had a question before. Laura, you're gonna talk, that's what it was.
Oh, okay.
You have something else?
So I also received an email regarding some of the more updates on the STAR. They're sending out STAR credit denials letters for people. They need more income, they need more information to verify their income, or if their income exceeds $500,000 this past year, or it is not their primary residence. So there are letters constantly going out to your constituents if they have any issues with the STAR exemption. It's just seemed to be an ongoing saga with this stuff lately. So I just wanted to bring it to everybody's attention. The main thing was they're removing 138 STAR exemptions off from people, and they're just pushing to get people signed up for the credit check, for the check program versus having the exemption on their school bill. There's not much we can do on our end. We've tried, our directors conference, our directors committee has sent letters. Assessors Association has sent letters. There's not much we can do, but I just wanted to give everybody the heads up since we are printing school bills now and they will be going out, and there will be some people, they do know that they're not going to have the STAR exemption on there. But sometimes, until the reality hits and their bill is $500 more, $450 more than it was, then they, will be calling you probably as town supervisors. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Laura. Any other questions for Laura? We are up to county administration.
Okay. So the first thing I was hoping to talk to the committee about today, we've spoken in kind of the abstract about this a few times, but what I would ask the committee to consider today is amending the employee handbook to insert a remote work policy for the county. And the remote work policy that I am suggesting is the following. Remote work may be permitted at the sole discretion of the department head. Short and sweet. What we have learned through the original shutdown and our scramble to implement remote work is that it's highly variable between departments as far as what departments it's even feasible for, and even within departments, it's largely dependent upon the employee, the nature of the work the employee does, whether or not they have adequate internet at home, and a myriad of details that I think my opinion at this point is that it doesn't make sense to try to establish a county-wide policy that is prescriptive, and rather what I'm suggesting is that the board consider formally enabling the department heads to allow remote work if they think it works for their operation.
So would we think that or wish that the department heads develop their own policy? Or guidelines, I should say?
Yes.
Danhap, I think, was first.
So these employees would have to have a county purchased computer to take to their home, correct?
Yes.
We already have 17 too many now. These new supervisor laptops that I'm not going to accept. What's the magnitude of this cost? We have no idea, right?
Well, they have computers already.
Not in their home.
No, it'd be their same work computer. It'd be a laptop they'd use now.
I assume quite a few employees have desktops at the county.
That number is fewer and fewer
Yeah.
each time we refresh computers. We purchased 50 laptops, I think, during the COVID shutdown. And so right now, I think we have adequate mobile devices to facilitate the remote work that's needed.
Thank you.
Matt?
Chris, is there anything in the current policy that deals with remote work at all? Or is this gonna be the only thing in there that is that one sentence, which I understand why you're doing it, but is there currently anything in there?
No.
Okay, thanks.
Dan, you had something?
Yeah, just point of clarity, is this at any time going forward, or is this during a, state of an emergency?
As it's currently put forward, it would be at any time.
And you're not fearful of abuse from something like this, favoritism or whatever?
No.
It's at their discretion. Because that would, if we came to that conclusion, that would be reflected in their evaluation.
Correct.
Well, but you also could instruct that department head, if you had concerns, to develop an internal department policy regarding, because DSS and Board of Elections and Veterans Affairs, they're all different.
Totally different animals, so yes, I agree.
Which is why we can't have a blanket policy for all the departments, because the duties vary so much. And some people are not able to do their duties from home, is that correct?
Correct, there's a number of departments where,
Buildings and grounds would have trouble.
as with the corrections officers, you know, there's just
They
certain
can take them
departments.
all, they can take them all.
There's just certain departments where it's not possible at all. And then even within departments, there are certain positions where it's very effective and other positions within that department where for a large number of reasons, it's not possible. So, you know, what I've communicated with the department heads is that there could be, or there should be, some dialogue between the department head and myself, Melissa, Roger, you know, if there are questions about, well, can this person work from home? Because sometimes it comes into the sensitive nature of the information the employee may be using. Well, that's a Roger question, right? What can be removed from the facility and what can't? Others are operational or accountability type questions that Melissa and I can help with. And the department heads, when we went through the initial shutdown, were really, in my opinion, really good about reaching out to us and saying, okay, this is my situation, what do you think? And we talked it through, and I think they came up with solutions that worked well for their departments.
Does an amendment of the handbook has to go to the full floor, right?
Yes, sir.
Let's go from here to personnel, correct?
Yes.
All right, well, if you need an additional laptop, take the one you have from me.
Brian Campbell?
So, question, Chris, there are departments where there's, like you said, corrections, where there's absolutely no opportunity. Should they be listed?
No, because there could conceivably be, let's say, a captain or a sergeant that may have paperwork that they could do just fine at home.
Okay. No, I was just trying to, you know, if there were certain ones that you knew, maybe you could take that off the board if that was important.
The board could. My preference would be that we leave it up to the department heads, because again, it's hard for me to think of every position in every department and say, no, there's no way that that could ever be done remotely, when a department head could come and say, well, wait a minute, the jail captain could do all sorts of paperwork from home and might be more efficient because he's not getting distracted, and then I've, precluded it from happening by putting it in the policy. So, my preference would be not to do that, but you certainly could.
If you'd done it 6 months ago, you probably would find out now that you were wrong when this whole thing happened.
Right.
Any further questions? Lester?
With all the guidelines, the department has to come back to you for meeting with Roger and.
So I didn't put that in the handbook, but that is my recommendation to the department heads is kind of talk it through with us first before you implement it. That always helps. Because that way, if I get a grievance, I know why instead of just getting hit cold with it. So
I'll entertain a motion to adopt
you've got
that.
Mr. Henke.
Oh, Mr. Henke?
I just want to say that the board should probably be ready for a little bit of hubris, when something like this happens, because there's going to be decisions the department head has to make about basically probably pretty similar jobs, but this person can do it, and this person probably can't, either for a personal reason or because of internet service or because of all kinds of stuff. And so there's going to be, how come you're letting this one do it and you're not letting me? We're going to start hearing some of that. We just, I think, got to be ready to shrug that off and send it pass it off to Chris or pass it off to wherever it should go. Just a heads up, it's going to happen. You're going to have that kind of hubris.
Yeah, when there's that kind of discretion, that's the way it works.
Yeah.
I'll move it, Dave.
Matt Hicks moves it. Do I have a second? Second by Lester. Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed?
No.
Mr. Shaw was opposed. Anyone else? Carried.
Thank you. Okay, so Mr. Half already brought this one up. As the board members, some board members may remember, I think it was the IT committee last cycle, we discussed deploying laptops to supervisors. So the recommendation from the IT committee was that we move forward with that. We did. We configured 17 laptops, had them available. I know Mr. Half has indicated he's not interested in receiving one. There may be other supervisors who have no interest in them. In speaking with Terry yesterday, we do have a need to deploy some more laptops. So what I would request is that if there are supervisors who don't want a laptop or do, please just email Terry or myself, and I can send it along to Terry, it doesn't matter, but let us know by the end of the week, please. And then if we know that, there are X number of supervisors who don't wish to have laptops, then we will take those, reconfigure them, and deploy them out into the workforce instead of having them tied up. So just if you could let us know one way or the other, that would be great, and by the end of the week, and then we'll work next week to reconfigure and push out into the workforce whatever we have left.
Questions? I'd like to make a comment on this. Chris and I discussed this just a little bit, is that the question you should be asking, if we're having laptops just to handle email, then to me it's a waste to have laptops for the supervisors. I would have envisioned the ability to do more with laptops or a tablet or something like that. For example, when our budget workshops, we could bring them up on our screen and we could keep along with the changes we made, because sometimes it's hard to see the numbers on the screen. There's a possibility that we could use them for other things, and as such as we could keep access to accounting policies and different information on a laptop for this. There may be other ways that the IT department can configure those for access on a non-county owned computer. I don't want to get in that, I just wanted to say that there's a possibility. So if I would envision this, I always would have liked to see some of this information in front of the screen so we look at it, especially doing Zoom meetings where some of the stuff that we have in front of us, we may not have it printed, we could look at it. So that's where I think that the question is where do we go from here? If we're strictly using it just for email, or should we really investigate before we make that decision to look at what else we can use these laptops for? I mean, to me, I would use it for that, but I have another laptop I use, and it has a lot of the other data on it anyway, so. I guess I open that up for discussion and thoughts, and Chris, and anyone else can comment on this also.
You've got Mr. Half, I'll let him go first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Haff.
I asked Debbie, because this was a surprise to me. I got an email, your laptop is ready, come get it. I'm like, what laptop? And so I asked for minutes of meetings where this was discussed, and I only received the minutes of the IT committee. So this was not brought to finance. I want to know why this did not come to finance. I imagine the expense is quite a bit, so it should have gone to finance. How much does 17 laptops for supervisors cost? Or
So very rough
did it
figures.
cost?
Very rough figures. They're just under $2,000 a piece. So that'd be $34,000. The reason it didn't go to finance was we already own the equipment. So there was no purchase required or anything else. It was a redeployment of existing resources.
But was that redeployment strategically for supervisors? I mean, was it purchased and they say, okay, we'll have a whole bunch because maybe we'll use these for the supervisors? It seems like how do you have 17 extra laptops on your hands that you then say, oh, let's give them to the supervisors?
No, this is COVID response.
It was we had purchased a cadre of laptops as the COVID response. It was a reprioritization of resources. So those laptops, and that's what spurred my conversation today, is those laptops were going to be deployed out into the workforce, and then after some discussions at the IT committee, it was decided that they would be perhaps better utilized by being deployed to the supervisors because of our continued use of Zoom and remote operations. And so that was just a reprioritization. And so we deployed them, got them reconfigured, set up for the supervisors. Now I believe that largely the supervisors who are interested in them have gotten them. And then by the end of this week, we know that, again, X number of supervisors aren't going to take advantage. We will go back to the original utilization of those.
But there's going to be a legacy to this, because if a supervisor has a laptop, in 3 years from now, he or she will need a new one. There's a legacy to this cost. $2,000 a piece. These must be really nice laptops. I don't think in this current climate with our economy and our budget that we should be finding new ways to spend $34,000.
Well said.
Dana Hogan?
Yeah, I would echo the same thing Dana Haff just said. I told Terry 3 weeks ago, and I confirmed with her, I have a $300 Chromebook that I paid for myself, and I would encourage supervisors to just incur the expense themselves and set a good example for the rest of the county. $2,000 for a laptop, to me, during this time, it's just ludicrous to spend that kind of money, or I should say reprioritize that money. Based on what I just heard, we're going to allow employees to be working from home, reprioritize them, and give them to the employees that are going to be working from home.
Any other comments? Sue Clary?
I am one of the ones that have the laptops, and quite frankly, I have a business laptop that I have that I didn't want to put county stuff on my business laptop. Our town computer is an antique, and it's impossible to Zoom at the town office because of lack of internet. So for me to do these county meetings, I was doing them from home on a personal laptop that needed to be used as other things and not for county Zoom. So I appreciate the laptop. I'm shocked at the expense of it because I've never paid that much for a computer in my life. But that being said, I appreciate having it here because I don't think I should be mixing business with county business. So thank you. And I can appreciate Dana, but I do like being able to do my county meetings from this laptop. Thanks.
Any other comments? Questions? So I'm taking it from what we've discussed today, that those who don't want laptops won't get laptops, those who have them and don't need them can turn them back in? So I think they can be repurposed.
Sorry, I just got notified. I shouldn't have answered a question off the top of my head without the information in front of me. Terry just informed me the laptops were $1,000, not $2,000.
More like it.
So I apologize.
Dan?
For the record, Chris, I do not need a laptop. I've made it known to some people, but I might not make it official, so I want to make it official.
Thank you.
Dave?
Yes, right.
So, Dan, you come into the meetings. I don't think you've ever Zoomed from home, or have you?
Did once. I did not like it. I did not feel that you can communicate the mood or your thoughts adequately.
Well, through Zoom at all? No, that's true. But, so do you have the capability then to Zoom from your house or whatever without?
If I want to.
Okay. And I think that was more why this was specific, was a lot of people have laptops or computers or something, they don't have the cameras, they don't have the audio, they don't have a way, and you gotta remember, these meetings all go on YouTube, and people have to hear you and understand what's being said. And this was a way of making that so everyone could be heard and understood. Now, some people do own the equipment, some don't. Some families, they have a laptop, but more than one person has to be on a Zoom meeting at the same time. So there's a lot of considerations here. And this was brought up, Matt Hicks might remember, 5 or 6 years ago, of having our own Chromebooks, laptops, something. And the whole idea then was to just cut down on paper. The amount of paper, I mean, I think Sarah Eidelman one time was keeping a stack of what Phyllis gave her in a year. It was like, I think she filled a room. So yeah, we could actually have a lot of savings if we didn't have to mail anything out, and it could be put on a computer. Would be quite a deal. I don't know the legality of that. Maybe some things have to be mailed. I don't really know. But I think for the most part, they get us all the information we need, and if we could have them on laptops. I don't know that they have to be county-owned, that they could be personal. Where county-owned works is if we are locked out and we have to be on Zoom, the county can go in and make sure if something goes wrong in the middle of the meeting, they can go into your laptop and put you back on.
Correct.
You can't do that with somebody's personal computer. So there's a lot of moving parts here. I'm glad they weren't $2,000 laptops. $1,000's plenty, but I think once you buy the camera and all those other things, I've never bought one with a camera. I've never owned one with a camera. My wife has hers, and I've used it sometimes to Zoom from home. But a lot of these things, you know, they've changed with the times. They're going to change with the times. We've had a group of supervisors that wouldn't even email or anything for a long time. Most of them have moved on in the past few years, and so this is kind of bringing us up to the next generation. And I'm sure the ones beyond us will even have more gadgets and gadgets to get on with. But I think the importance of YouTube and Zoom and stuff isn't going away, and I think it's going to be mandated, which is worse. So then it's going to be the clarity of what gets out there and how it gets out there. So I don't know if we want to do it as a policy or whatever, but I thought IT moved ahead and I thought this was probably a significant job, and the timing was right. I don't like spending the money any more than anybody else, but sometimes spending the money is important and actually saves you money in the long run, and I think this one could get us there. Yeah.
I don't disagree with Dana and Dana. I think Dana Half is correct. There will be there will be repercussions and costs that will extend with renewals. But I feel there's a piece of equity here. Supervisors who need to have a better form of connectivity, I think we need to be able to offer that to supervisors, and supervisors that have the ability and don't need the laptops. I think, you know, I personally don't need the laptop, so I'm going to be turning mine back in and have it repurposed. But I think there's a piece of equity there that has to be acknowledged for those supervisors who are in rural settings and don't have the equipment to continue on with these type of Zoom meetings or any other electronic virtual platforms that will come about in the future.
And some don't have internet. Chris, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, that the initial goal of the laptops was not to have them simply be for email and Zoom. So, Mr. O'Brien is correct. We had some internal discussions. There had been discussions with the board a number of years ago about making whether it's a OneDrive or the equivalent of our P drive here on the intranet, where supervisors could have access to information. We rolled these out to the supervisors, and we've just been using them really for Zoom and for email because that was the immediate need. It was my intention to have some conversations with Terry and then at the next IT committee discuss what additional utilization of the laptops the supervisors would like. So if the tenor of the supervisors is that largely you don't want the laptops anymore, we will shelve that conversation. But we were trying to move forward with getting you more information and more useful information on the laptops. It was never the intention that they be solely for email and Zoom, but it does take us time with everything else that's going on to get that done.
I got Dana Half, and then Jim.
It seems to me every year around September, we talk about how we have to make some really hard, tough decisions for the next coming year, budget-wise. And then we do things like this. To me, it's an anomaly. It should not exist. We get amnesia very, very quickly. And I guarantee you after this budget cycle, when we go into December, January, we're going to hear the same talk about, oh, we have to make really tough, hard decisions, and then we won't. I think this would have been a lot less painful if we could have had these discussions before someone sent me an email saying, come get my laptop.
Jim?
To Chris's point, and Chris, understanding the, getting that documentation and information onto the laptops for the supervisors, I think there's a more economical way to do that. And, Dana Hogan brought up the point of Chromebooks, and Chromebooks are rather inexpensive, between $200 and $300. If you create a web-based platform, which I think Terry can attest to, being able to log on as like a virtual private network to go on to look at those documentations if needed, that's an application that can be added to a Chromebook very simply. So I think there's a more economical way to do this, and we can review that in IT.
And I think to leverage off that a little bit, James, is that there is a capability of a OneDrive. And this OneDrive system, we already have that as part of our email sort of package. So that could actually be on a personal computer if people would allow it to, and would only be able to log into the site if you had your own passwords and stuff, and you keep it segregated from the other things. So there are a lot of different solutions to that to look at. Any other comments or discussion?
I rather like being able to sequester the information. I like my county stuff on the county computer. If somebody wants to come and foil it, they can foil the county computer. They aren't into my personal equipment, into my personal home, and everything else looking for FOIL requests.
Jim?
OneDrive is a county platform, so if they need to FOIL, again, having a web-based platform makes that easy, Bob.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? All right, next on your agenda, Chris.
So something else, because this kind of crosses government operations and the IT committee, so I just wanted to float it here, and then there could be more discussion at IT. So I think I've mentioned it to the board before. We had a department head meeting a couple weeks ago, and one of the things I asked the department heads were lessons learned from the shutdown that we experienced in March, April, and early May, and things that we could do proactively or things we could do better if we were forced into that situation again. One of the items that was brought up was, we've addressed most of them, right? So we've deployed laptops, we're talking about remote work, we're moving forward with the soft phones. The last remaining item was the electronic signature of documents. So Terry looked into it.
Okay. Thank you. Apologize for the break. So what were we talking about? Chris was talking about.
Yeah, so I was, I'm not sure exactly where I lost you, so I'll recap a little bit. Trying to be proactive, talking to department heads about what things we can do better if we're forced to go into a different operational stance and be more remote. The last item that was raised by department heads that we haven't addressed yet is electronic signature of documents. Terry looked into some solutions for us. You may be familiar with a software company called DocuSign. It's out there, insanely expensive for what we would need to do, so we're not looking at that. As I talked to Terry about it yesterday, there's two solutions that I see. One is the kind of low-tech, easy solution, and that would require, at least right now, what I'm aware of, and there may be others, but probably amendments to the purchasing, audit, and voucher policy that would allow the scanned vouchers. So we would still be in paper world, right? But a department head that was remote could print out a voucher, sign it, scan it, and email it in, and it would be sufficient. Right now, those policies call for original signatures, no faxes, no copies, anything like that. That's kind of the easy solution. The problem is to really do a full electronic signature of documents is we have to change the whole workflow for purchasing and vouchers, and we already own a software platform that is capable of doing that, and that's the Laserfiche that the county clerk has. It has an internal electronic documents module that we own the rights to. We would need some additional licensing out in the county, but it would be our cheapest solution. I think the way I left it with Terry yesterday is that for free, always in quotes, the vendor is going to work with my staff, and what we're going to do is we're going to mock up purchasing in an electronic workflow within Laserfiche, and then we may trial it on, not on real purchases, but do some trial runs internally and see how it works, how cumbersome it is. I'm not sure that there is a need or a desire to switch to an all-electronic workflow all the time, every time, and I'm not asking the committee today for any amendments to those policies. It's more of I just wanted to keep the committee and the board informed of kind of the last component that we're working on. We have a lot more due diligence to do, a lot more investigation, but it is something that we're looking at. And if we needed to, or if we got in another shutdown, likely the immediate reaction would be to ask to amendments to the procurement, audit and voucher policy and any other ones that are out there, so that we could do scanned version of documents. And then ultimately, the more robust solution would be a complete transition to an electronic workflow. So again, I'm not asking for action at this point, just wanted to throw it out there, let you all know what we were thinking of. Certainly receptive to any thoughts, comments, concerns as we move forward.
Thank you. I know that on my iPad that I can signature it with my finger and then forward it on to whoever it is there. So there's another way to do the vouchers besides that. I don't know if that's acceptable here, but
Yep.
we do use that.
Under the current policy, it wouldn't be, but yeah, we're open to all thoughts and solutions on this.
Thank you. Any questions on that? What else? Chris?
Okay, so the last thing I have is, some of you may have seen, in looking, I've mentioned this to you several times over the last couple of months. I'm quite concerned from an employer standpoint about schools returning, because the ideal situation for us as an employer, and especially a large employer, would be for schools to reopen 100% in person. I'm sure most people are aware of this at this point, that that's really not going to happen. K through 4, 5, or 6, depending on the school district, is going in person, and most other grades are going remote or hybrid or some combination thereof. The issue that I see as an employer is that the way the school reopening plans have developed is it places really unique challenges on our employees who have school-aged children. So we talked about this. I spoke to the chairman about it, and public health and Roger. I know what I'm about to discuss is going to scare some people. I just want to let you know nothing's been committed. We're not doing anything. I just thought we needed to have a discussion so that the board could have some information and figure out what to do. So the thought is that we were planning to start moving departments over to the Burgoyne Avenue School in March for obvious reasons due to COVID. That did not happen. BOCES did move out first week in July. So currently, 3/4 of that building is empty. The thought being that if we needed to, if the school reopening plans were causing significant childcare issues to our employees, is there a solution where we could partner with a nonprofit or another entity to operate a child care center in the Burgoyne Avenue School to try to make it so that our employees were able to keep working? So this is a little bit of a chicken and the egg, because you don't know if something's feasible until you know how many people would need it, what age groups would need it, and everything else. So what we did was I made a survey. Tim put it in SurveyMonkey for me, and we sent it out to all employees and asked for them to respond. So what I want to talk to you about real quickly is what we got for responses and what that may or may not mean. So can everybody see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So we sent this out to everybody. So far, I've got 192 responses.
And how many people total?
406 people are on that email list.
Okay, so almost half.
So the first one is probably the most salient question, and are you facing challenges finding reliable childcare for the upcoming school year? Surprisingly, the majority of people said no. Out of the respondents, only 28 people said yes. So that is somewhat encouraging. To be honest with you, I thought the number would be higher. This one's a little hard for me to summarize for you because they're all over the place. So it's how many children are in need of care. You'll see that the vast majority, 80% of the respondents, said not applicable because, again, they have child care. So the answers are not summarizable for you, but the majority are one child, and there's some that are 2 children, but 2 children was the most that anybody had that would be in need of care. This is a relevant graph because my thought in trying to examine this solution is not that the county would pay for this, okay? So this would be paid for by the employee. In order to kind of know, you gotta back into it. I gotta know how many kids, because that's gonna dictate how many staff you need, and then how many staff is gonna dictate what the expense is, and you gotta know if you can cover your expenses. So what I was trying to get at here was a sense of how much people are paying currently for their child care to know if we could cover that expense. And of the people that are in need, it looks like you're about split between $100 and $200 a week and under 50 a week. And just from personal experience, the under 50 a week is likely a school-age child who's just getting after school care for that, 1 or 2 hours when they get off the bus until the parent can pick them up. Most people do not need 5-day-a-week care, and that's really what prompted me to go down this road, is that because of the nature of the way the schools are reopening, kids are going to be in school not 5 days a week. And in some schools, it's Tuesday, Thursday every week. In some schools, it's Monday, Wednesday this week, Tuesday, Thursday the next week, which is very hard for parents because daycare, childcare doesn't work that way, right? You got to pay for the slot the whole way. So in this case, you had 15 people out of the ones that said they would need childcare saying that they would need it 5 days a week. The others, it would be some combination thereof. And that's, there's a text file that I have of all the responses, and they are all over the place. It's, Monday this week, Friday the next week, alternating Tuesdays and Thursdays and Mondays and Wednesdays. So that is a challenge. This is an interesting answer. Broadband internet access at home, 90% or 167 of the respondents said yes. Only 21 said no. Because one of the thoughts here was that if we had employees who did not have broadband at home and were struggling with childcare, if we could provide them with childcare they were paying for at Burgoyne, it would give their students access to broadband that they wouldn't have at home. But surprisingly, the vast majority have it.
So, Chris, I was just gonna ask this question later, but that seems appropriate on the broadband. It would seem to me that locations that need internet aren't really close to here. They're more in Salem, Hampton. I think there's some spots in Granville, not very many, but down through there, Dresden, Putnam, and going down the other way into White Creek and Jackson. I think that possibly those areas would be more dense where they don't have internet.
Yep.
And secondly, if you're looking for after-school care, that would be location-based also.
Correct, after-school care would.
So I just wonder if you took locations into consideration here.
So what I tried to do when I sent the survey out was I didn't get into any specifics, and I said very clearly that this is not something the county is committing to. We're just gathering information. But I did say that what we were exploring was provision of childcare in the Fort Edward, Hudson Falls area to give, parents an idea. Because exactly to Mr. O'Brien's point, if you are a resident of White Creek and you need after-school care, it's probably going to be impossible for you to transport the child from Cambridge School up here after school. So, let's see. So 58% 58 respondents said their children would be participating in remote school. Again, that dovetails with that broadband question. Most people have viable child care options other than something that would be done like this. Only 17 people said that as of right now they had no viable child care options. Okay, so that's it for the survey. I'll stop sharing my screen so that Mr. O'Brien can see things better.
Well, you're not sharing. I think that there is going to be a bigger demand on child care. I know that one of the larger providers around is, I don't know if they're out of business yet, but I know they're...
Yes, they are.
Okay, so they're not available, so that's going to put pressure on other places. So.
Correct. So basically what I wanted to try to discuss with the board today is I've spoken to the governor's office in the state, OCFS. I've spoken to Tammy and DSS, Tracy at LEAP, and Lynn Sickles from Southern Adirondack Child Care Network. now that we have received some data from employees, I can tell you that there is a need / demand for childcare. It is not huge, and kind of what I envision the next step would be is that if the board says this is something we are willing to entertain and investigate, I would like to form a planning committee and convene that planning committee later this week to start talking through all the details. There are a million hurdles here. This is a complicated issue. I was told by the state that, well, I know from my colleagues, we're not the only county that may be considering this, and that there is some discussion between the second floor and the leadership of OCFS about waiving the licensing requirement for a municipally run dependent child care facility, which would expedite the ability to do any of this. But again, the goal here would be to partner with another entity to actually run the facility, so that would be a LEAP or YMCA, something along those lines. I don't know if that's feasible or not. I guess at this point, I would like to open it up to questions, comments, concerns, rotten tomatoes from the board, and then try to get a sense of, is this something that the board would like me to pursue, or is this just a non-starter?
Dana Half.
Non-starter. I don't think the county should be entertaining ideas of competing with private enterprise. That's not our business. The next question is the consideration of amending the employee handbook for remote work. Would a need to provide childcare in your home be a justifiable reason to go to your department head to have remote work at home? Is that a good reason?
That's up to the department head after the way it's put forward.
But it's not excluded as a reason. You say, on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't have any childcare available to me. Can I work remotely? I think that kind of solves the problem.
Isn't there an issue with some of our employees who cannot work from home? That they're gonna have issues with childcare? I'm not not trying to say I'm for or against, but I'm just saying that's a consideration taking place, is how many of those, what percentage of our employees can't work from home? You got DPW, correction officers, sheriffs, public safety.
Anecdotally, what we learned from the first is that the majority of our employees cannot work remotely.
So we will end up having some people impacted by not having available childcare and not be able to come to work.
It is a potential issue, yes.
Thank you. Dan Shaw?
Yeah, Chris, you might have shown it, but I missed it. Is there age range in this survey?
So the way it was, I didn't put that out, but thank you. Yes, when I put the survey out, what I said was that it was only for school-age children, right? Again, not knowing at all what the magnitude of the interest would be, I felt in discussing it with some other people that the priority was school-age children because those are the ones that have really been disrupted just because of COVID, right? So if you're like me and you have a 16-month-old, you needed to have childcare for them anywhere because they were always going to need care 5 days a week. But if you have a 7-year-old like I do, you were kind of operating under the assumption that 5 days a week they were going to be in school, and now they may or may not be. So originally it was said school-age children, preference being given to K through 8. Again, kind of making some assumptions here that your 9 through 12 graders are probably more capable of being left home alone and doing some remote learning on their own than my little 7-year-old guy is. Now the numbers are such that there could probably be, if the board were to say we're interested in looking at this, the numbers are low enough that that could probably be re-examined as far as if the board wanted to go with a wider age range or not. There are also different requirements as far as, I don't know the correct term, so I'll use the wrong one, but a student-to-teacher ratio based on the age. The older the kids, the fewer staff members per kid you need. The younger, obviously, you need more. So that was another reason that we kind of went with the school-age children first.
And from this survey, did you actually come up with a total number of children? Was that in there? Percentages I saw along, but was there an actual number where there was a need, total number?
So I haven't been able to get to that level of granularity yet because those are all text responses, and I sent out a reminder email to everybody, and I got 100 more responses yesterday. So there's a bunch of new data that Tim and I need to go through. But I would say we're in the 50-ish range right now.
Mr. Henke?
Something Dana said kind of, maybe I interpreted you wrong, but we're not gonna hire people to run a daycare. We're gonna partner with some other agency to run the daycare. Is that correct?
That is my very strong preference, if possible.
Yeah. You know, I think that would be exactly right. We shouldn't have government competing, but if we're
I will also
if
say,
we're hiring somebody to do it, that's a whole different ballgame.
again, this is more of my personal hat, not my county administrator hat. There is not enough capacity in the private industry right now, even close to it. The private industry is simply not there. So while I completely agree with Mr. Half, 99% of the time, if there is private industry that's willing to do something, and I'll use the transfer stations as a good example, if there is a private industry that already does a function, I don't think government should be doing it. In this case, I can say from experience, personal experience, there is not enough private providers out there. There are just not enough slots.
Dana Hogan?
So a couple things. Chris, I would have liked the opportunity to discuss this before a survey had gone out. One of the questions I would have is, did the survey question ask about whether or not those individuals who were seeking or would be potentially seeking childcare, do they have the ability to work from home? Did you specify that kind of question?
No, I did not, because I didn't know if anybody was going to have the ability to work remote until today's meeting.
Okay, so you're saying there's going to be no cost to the county whatsoever?
I cannot make that promise, sir. I'm saying that the goal would be for the employees to pay for it and for it to be a partnership with another organization. Nothing is that far along yet.
But we would still be sponsoring a municipal or county-sponsored daycare. So the liability alone would probably be significant, correct?
Again, if it's another organization, there would be a contractual agreement that would likely indemnify us, but it would be on our premises, so there would likely be some liability exposure there.
Now, what are we taking away from that premises now? I gotta believe, we bought that building. I didn't think we bought it to run a daycare. So I guess I'm curious, what are we taking away from that building at this point now?
Well, our plan for the vacant half of that building was public health, and at least in my conversations with Patty and KJ, they do not feel as though they can be moved anytime soon.
Thank you.
Sue Clary? Sue, unmute, please.
Thanks, Dave. Chris, have you thought about hours? Because people work different hours and different shifts. And would that be during like a school time? Like a school day, 7 to 4 or something?
Yeah, again, these are all details that were nowhere near, but in the survey, I put out 7:30 to 5.
Yeah.
The idea being that the majority of our shift one workers work 8 to 4:30. And so if we did it 7:30 to 5, we would be able to cover the ability to drop off, get here, punch in, get ready for work by your start time.
And it would only be for county employees?
That's what, yes.
Thank you.
Dana Half?
I can already see where private enterprise that provides this is gonna claim that the county is taking away their business, because it would be way more convenient for an employee to have the daycare very close to where they work, rather than drive in the opposite direction 15 minutes to a daycare near you. And so those private enterprises are gonna lose subscribers just to the fact that it's more convenient for the employee to have it closer to their place of work. I don't want to harm private enterprise. I think this would harm. Also, I heard that the county may not have to get a license for that. That's a business cost that these other businesses have to bear. So already it's kind of an unlevel playing field against private enterprise. I would like to have seen in that survey, and I agree with Dana Hogan, the survey probably should have been approved of beforehand. It's kind of like putting the cart in front of the horse. But I would like to have seen a question, what employees have difficulty right now finding daycare, where they need daycare, but they can't find it. Was that one of the questions, Chris?
Essentially, yes.
And what is a small minority that cannot find daycare right now?
Yeah, it's about 30, 35.
Thank you.
Brian Campbell?
So, just listening to all this, and this isn't something on my radar because I don't have any young children. But I have some philosophical concerns. First of all, I always dislike when government tries to replace family because family is the best structure we have in our society, and that's what keeps things under control and makes for better children, makes for better families in the future, and also saves money. Second of all, though, there has been these concerns. I'm sure Bob Hankey can remember one of our best inter-county trips was to a company, Otis, the gun cleaning, and they're out in the middle of nowhere. And in order to employ people, they had to have their own daycare to even get people to come there because there was no place to have your kids during the day. So that was very interesting. But I think in this situation, daycares got shut down from the COVID just like schools did too. So it presented a bigger problem. That's why there's more need now as some of them have been shut down. But as we come out of this, to agree with the two Danas, I think there will be other entrepreneurs who will come up with ideas and solutions that can probably do this. It's whether they can do it quick enough for our employees. I understand that's a concern. But last of all, my concern is what happens if we got COVID into this situation where it's all our employees' kids and now we spread it throughout the building? I guess it wasn't my concern originally, but as you think this through, now these are your employees, and now you've congregated them all into one place. And if something happens, then we've maybe done more harm to the whole culture here at the county. So I guess I've got more questions and answers out of this whole thing at this point. So I guess I'm not really on for it. I can see where there's a need. I think we could have as many bad things come out of this as we could good. That's kind of where I'm at.
I've drawn on both sides because one of my biggest concerns is what's the impact on our employees, not so much on childcare, but if they can't get childcare, what's going to be the impact on the performance and the delivery of our systems here and our work-related product, how they're going to be able to do that work without being able to get it. They're going to have to stay home, take care of the kids when they have no other options. So that's just my question. I think we should track it going forward to see what the impacts are, and I agree that others will fill in, but I think that as we look into other similar organizations caring for people, a lot of them are older-based caretakers that are concerned with COVID and don't want to get involved in situations, so that may impact some of the other caretakers around in childcare also. So I think we should at least keep on top of it, to see what's going on, to monitor it, and see if we can understand where we're headed for, and then make some decisions to see if we can help them. Oh, Bob, yes.
I think that it's probably worth, though, giving Crystal a pat on the back here. We're in some pretty uncertain times here, and taking an innovative look at things we might be able to do to make our system work a little more efficiently, a little better, keep things functioning more like normal. I think that's a very worthwhile thing to do. I want to give you a pat on the back for thinking innovatively and stepping forward. And I would really like to see the rest of the statistics when we get into your other 100 people that responded to things. I think that, then we start assessing need. Maybe this isn't exactly the thing to do. Maybe there is something we should be doing to try and help out. Thanks.
And is there an opportunity for our are groups that are already in the system. Is there an opportunity to work with some of them that provide daycare? Is there room for another daycare to open? Is there room for those things where we actually do help private business? That's, you know, there's enough people, there's enough children probably that would keep a daycare open if there was one that was willing to do it and do it right. And I think all that's changing every time the governor signs an executive order as to what they can or cannot do. And I think that's the hardest job about being in this business right now would be, you know, today I set it all up for this, and tomorrow now it's got to be that. And that would be the same if we were in it. So I think that's the biggest challenge right now. I don't know where to go forward with this, but I do give you credit for looking. And I think you were surprised that the numbers were lower than.
Yeah, I was.
Because even looking at the numbers myself, I thought they'd be a lot higher.
Be curious to see what the numbers are when we get into the school.
But family's still the answer. I don't know how we're going to get there, but that's going to be the answer. That's the way we're going to recover from all of this.
So Chairman, just to clarify, I didn't hear any support for the idea. So this is dead, am I correct, or am I moving forward with the planning committee?
I thought that I heard we would be interested in understanding more statistics when you get to crunching the numbers.
That was one person.
Well,
but I also heard a number of people in between areas. But
We'll vote.
I don't hear the support for it myself. Do you want to do a vote on it, or?
You got Sue, her hand up.
Sue?
I thought I heard Chris say he had 100 more that had come in that weren't included in the survey. Is that correct, Chris?
So the 100 responses that I received yesterday were in those numbers I gave you.
They were. Okay.
That response that I gave was when Mr. Shaw was asking how many children specifically were going to need care. And the reason is that those answers are text. So I need to read through those 100 responses that came in yesterday and then tabulate that all into numbers. And it's somewhat lengthy because they're not all 5 day a week. You know, I can't just go through and tally them up and say that we've got 50 kids that need care 5 days a week, because some of them are 3 hours a day and some of them are 2 days a week, alternating between weeks. So my very quick read of the information last night is that it's somewhere in the upper 30s to 50 number of kids. But again, that's going to vary day to day.
Thank you.
So, without calling a formal vote, I'd just like to have a show of hands who's in favor of exploring this more. So would you raise your hands, please? Or say yes, no?
Exploring more.
So one,
Well, that's so general, vague, exploring more. You want me to support what?
So my next step, if told by the board to move forward, would be to convene the planning group that I envision to be me, Tammy, Lynn Sickles from Southern Adirondack Child Care, Tracy Ross from LEAP, somebody from Public Health, and likely Roger to help me with the contractual relationships, liability, thinking through those kind of things. And then working with those stakeholders to figure out what would this look like, who are the potential partners, how do you structure it with the kids given the age groups of the respondents, what would you need for physical space, would we need alterations to Burgoyne Avenue, or because it was a school, are we fine to use it as is? There are a million details that really need to be examined and fleshed out before I could come back to the board with anything concrete, as in this is a plan that, should you want to, we could move forward with.
right?
So, after hearing all that, and this meeting's public, and there's a lot of publicity, and there's a lot of YouTube viewers, and this is all gonna be out there, I guess I wouldn't wanna stop it at this point, because from this being out there, you may get people that have ability and opportunity that are looking to do this, that if that planning group meets, maybe they would come forward and take care of this issue, so it's not basically our issue, and it would be fixed that way, I guess would be what I would look forward to, that the private industry would step forward. And so I guess I would support it that way, because then you have a collective number and something to relate to those groups that may be interested. But as Dana Hogan had brought out, you know, if it's not our direct cost, and it could be kept from being any of our costs, and you can make that happen, if it's a benefit to our employees, that's a win-win for everybody. So I guess I wouldn't want to derail the train at this point if that's where we can take it.
Okay.
I would support that.
My comment on that would be, if they heard it for this Zoom meeting, is they'd be reaching out right now for information.
But if you had the group, then you have all the minds together and they can solidify what those numbers are. Whereas if you leave it all in limbo, then they have to contact everybody individually. That's the only thing I was going by.
So I'm gonna rephrase it. How many members, open all supervisors, would be willing to move forward on the planning group cycle of this? Could you please raise your hands or voice?
You said two different things. Do you want committee members or do you want all supervisors?
Let's limit the committee members. Committee members. Matt, for it? Lester?
Paul Ferguson.
Paul Ferguson?
I'm for exploring it further and bringing it back.
So,
You know, there's more questions than answers, so I'd like more answers to the questions.
we have a majority of the committee would like to move forward with the planning process.
Okay.
Yes, Jim?
Dave, how quick will the answers be back on this, when the information will come back? I mean, we're on 8/25, school start in less than 2 weeks. I mean, we're really putting a crunch on this, for this information.
Al
I just, full disclosure again, for at least another 36 days, I'm the chairman of the LEAP organization. And I can tell you from my experience with them, if we are not exempted from the licensing, you're not talking about this school year anyway. You're a year out from the license, and the building has got to be inspected and pass inspection, and there's all kinds of criteria that the building has to meet in order to be a daycare. So I just want to make sure that we're clear on that we might not be talking about, we're probably definitely not talking about the fall semester at minimum. And you're probably more likely the 21-22 school year.
Yeah, my discussions with OCFS is they would be receptive to fast tracking this, but in all reality, if it were to move forward, a January 1st start date is the absolute best case scenario. And I mean, that's rainbows and unicorns, stars align kind of stuff.
And that's if the building, if the building meets code as well.
Yes.
Dana?
If we think we're gonna have a bunch of government officials get together and make the problem better, we're crazy. We only make the problem worse when we interfere and intrude into private enterprise. If we do this, I would like to have a survey go out to all the existing daycares in the county and ask how this would impact them if they lose their clientele. They may go out of business, may have a daycare that has 5 kids. They get on the school bus drops them off. Remember, these are school-age children. How would you have a child get off the school bus in Granville and then transport to this location? The employee is going to have to leave work, go get the kid, bring the kid back. It's going to be many more problems going to erupt out of this. We think we're going to fix a problem, we're going to create 4 more.
Okay. So Chris has got his charter.
What? Well, I was going to say that I kind of agree with Dana, and my hope is that the private sector, from hearing and seeing all this today, is gonna step to the plate and we're gonna hear more from them. I'm hoping that this is gonna give them the opportunity to step forward and make these things happen, but COVID has really hurt them. They've been shut down.
Dana Hogan?
Yeah, I would like, if you could, Chris, add that to your list of surveys. I would ask that you reach out to the private daycares in our community, because I would like to know. With all due respect, I don't want to take anybody's word for it until I hear from them, whether they can handle the capacity privately.
Jim?
I agree, and Chris, I'd be interested to know if the information from those daycare providers do they have plans for expansion and adding more space? You know, I agree with Dana Haff. This is not our arena, and let the experts who work in this industry and run this industry, you know, create the process and answers.
Okay. Any other business to come before the board or the committee?
Matt Jones needs a
Matt?
couple minutes.
Sorry, I missed the agenda. I was out that day. I do have a few things to bring up, and seeing as though we're on the BOCES building, we'll start right off with that. The first thing is the roof engineering update. I just got some plans back for the structural and mechanical end of it. What we need to get done is the hazmat removal engineering. And the cost for that is $15,225. We already put a buffer in. The last time I brought it there, we didn't know that number. So what I would be asking for is $11,850 more to finish up the engineering. If we were going to do the project, we'd have to engineer the removal of the, the asbestos and any other hazardous materials. So that's the first thing to start off. And that roof is something we've been talking about for a year. So that would kind of all in engineering would be done, and it would put us out to bid.
So do we have the money? Do we have the money in the budget for that, Matt?
I think we take that money, that extra $11,850. I don't budget for that stuff. That would be out of the capital plan for which we had set aside. Chris could answer that better, where the money comes from.
Chris?
Come from the contingency account in the capital project 125. I don't have that number in front of me. I apologize, but there is more than adequate funds in the contingency account to cover that.
Okay, does this have to go to finance?
Yes.
Entertain a motion to send this to finance. Paul, do I have a second? Lester? Any further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, Matt.
All right, so when we're on the BOCES building, Chris brought up, we have BOCES building, it's the Burgoyne building. BOCES did move out. So we have half of it open right now. The only true people we have over there is Board of Elections. And hearing from the nurses about their move, and also kind of just reading the writing on the wall here of what our master plan was, when we started the capital plan and when we bought the Burgoyne building, I think it's fair to say that if anything, at best, that plan kind of got put on hold. So I have an idea for the BOCES half, maybe one other room would be something to explore, would be to take the current Head Start buildings, which up are at River Street. There's two of them. One of them has their admin and one is their school. And I think that would be a great fit for that wing at Burgoyne. If we were going to do something with that building, it would be, we'd be able to sell the buildings up there. If this all could work, I'd like to explore it farther. I've talked to Tracy from LEAP, preliminary about it, gave her a tour. Obviously there would be, it's not a direct move-in situation. We would have to do, as the landlord to them, we would probably have to do some sort of, remodeling to get it ready for them for a school. But is it something that we could, I'd like to move forward with that a little bit, and I'm looking for opinions.
Have any comments?
You get Dana half.
Dana half?
Matt, I think that's a very good idea. Since we already own the buildings that you're talking about, the Head Start are in, we already own them.
Yes.
We could then divest ourselves of that real property, get some money to come into the budget. And I think it's a genius idea. Very good, Matt.
Dan Shaw.
Yeah, this is the first I've heard of it, Matt, so, and maybe you and Chris, I should be asking both of you, and you can help me out. The purpose, I thought originally of buying that and moving public health over there was so that it freed up the annex building to be tore down eventually. Now, if you're moving Head Start in there and liquidating buildings, you've totally changed the plans here. And should there be a little more discussion on that, long-term planning?
Yeah, I guess I
That's
disagree.
why
I
we're-
disagree completely, but
Say what? I didn't hear Chris, I'm sorry.
I completely disagree with this proposal. The idea is to move them out of Head Start eventually. That is what Matt and I have talked about for a number of years. However, if we move them now just because the capital project had to get put on pause because of COVID, we have given up on the rest of the campus. You'll never get that back. So if the board wants to pull the plug on getting rid of Annex 1 and Annex 2 and the DPW shop, then we could move forward with this. But we will have significant legacy costs to Annex 1 specifically. Otherwise, my recommendation would be not to move forward with this immediately, because I agree, I want to get out of St. Paul and Dix Avenue both. But if you do it now, you basically committed to staying in Annex 1 and Annex 2 and the current DPW shop for the foreseeable future.
Well, and following along with that, I wanted to ask this question, and maybe I'm just the one that doesn't see it. What is, even with COVID, what is the issue with moving public health down there? If you had the computers set up and all the wiring and everything, isn't it just a matter of moving stuff in a day? If you've got everything else there? What is
It's called New York State Department of Health.
Now,
They have to inspect, they have to go every step of the way, they have to be included in the middle of COVID. They got so many things going on, it might be 2 years before they even look at that. I don't know.
No, it's not even the Department of Health I'm concerned about. It's literally, public health has been flat out since beginning of March.
Right, I
And
understand that.
you're right, it's, setting up computers and desks, but there is an incredible amount of work that is involved in moving an office that's been located in one place for 40 years. They do not have the bandwidth to do that right now. They don't have the ability to go through all their files and organize things and move things, and it will burden an already overstretched department when they're frazzled.
For how long? I mean, do we have any?
How long is
We're
this?
talking 6 months, a year is what we're talking?
Probably 2.
Till we get a vaccine.
Yeah.
Because this right now, you're talking a major change in direction. With the suggestion that Matt has just brought up, and man, I think that needs a lot more discussion before we ever give him any approval or disapproval. I don't even wanna, I guess I don't wanna have to sort that all out in a hurry. I think that needs a lot of dialogue. And I'm sure there's 100 things I'm not even thinking of that other people will before we commit to that.
Thank you. I hear that the federal guideline for vaccine is the efficacy is 50% and they're good to go. Some of the best ones might be 65. So people are waiting for a vaccine. Nothing will change. Nothing will change. Matt, the size of the building, could it handle Head Start and other departments, or is Head Start going to fill up half the building?
Head Start would fill up half of the building.
Bad idea.
So we still have rooms down, if you're familiar now with, if you're familiar with the building, the BOCES end of the building would be a trade, tit for tat with the River Street buildings. It would still leave the rooms that were on the south end of the building unoccupied.
Right, because right now Board of Elections is the only one in the south end of the building, so there's room there for other people to go.
Brian Campbell is next.
So here's my question, because maybe Dan can fill me in since he was here. Were we prepared to spend $10 to $20 million to change the campus here before this? Because if you remove all these buildings and replace them, I gotta believe we're in the $10 to $20 million. And you weren't prepared to go there, is that what you're saying?
Well, what I'm saying
Because this is a change in course, but I think because we're probably set back 10 years right now from this COVID thing. At the earliest, the way I see it, with interest having gone away and that not coming back. I think we're at a 10-year pause to even regain footing. And I think at the point, and maybe Chris has a better number, I'm thinking we're in the $10 to $20 million range to make those things happen. And I don't know that our board was probably ever quite there. We were seeing how things were playing out, seeing how revenue was coming in, and the revenue all dried up. So, as I said to you at our meeting on Friday, priorities change during these things because they have to. Certain things reach a different level, and you have to change as they reach a different level. And here's one where our maintenance costs, and even Chris said he looked to be out the one over here, the maintenance costs are getting so high that yes, if we had a building that was already meant to be a school and all that, we could, as Dana have said, we could divest ourselves of those buildings. That might even pay for the roof or at least most of it. I don't know. So your priorities change, and I think this is an opportunity. But until we're willing to spend 10 or 20 million, we haven't put anything on pause because I don't think we were where we were ready to spend 10 or 20 million of taxpayer dollars to change this campus. Until we have a revenue source or some different economic environment, I think that is on pause for 10 years. And in the meantime, we could have saved a lot of money in expense just maintaining some of these other buildings if we don't have them. And Chris is right, there's an expense to the annex buildings. And we are kind of grandfathered if we don't touch them and leave them alone and don't do anything to them. But to change them is going to cost a fortune also. So at this point, we need to look at every avenue we can, and I think Matt's done a good job at looking at something outside the box. And I guess this was the plan eventually, if we had built a new campus, was to make all that happen, which I didn't realize till a few weeks ago. So maybe moving that up and saving the money now isn't a bad idea, but I don't know what it would have taken to ever got this board to investing the 10 to 20 million to make those things happen. And that might have taken us 10 years of real good years, not 10 years after COVID.
Matt Hicks, then Dana Hogan.
Yeah, Matt, I appreciate looking into it, but you can look at this from a big perspective, 30,000 foot level. Because if we make one move now, that changes exactly what we would have done, 5 years from now, looking back. Why did we do that? Give me a master plan. Show me your long-term master plan of what we want to get to. From now until then, we're going to get how this works into that. We don't know that. We shouldn't jump into something real quick without looking at the whole picture. And we're not looking at the whole picture. We're not prepared to make that decision to do that now.
Dana Hogan?
I do like what Matt actually brought forward. And one of the things, when you talk of master plans, it sounds like we're moving forward and allowing employees to work from home. And with the, culture of business changing to allow for more of a remote workforce, have we given any consideration as to whether or not we will need buildings in the future?
Exactly.
And that has been discussed. Chris has brought that up. The chairman's brought that up. And it's a very good point, Dana. And that's kind of why I kind of like the idea, is because expansion may not even be plausible or reasonable, or a reason to do it even.
Yeah, even in my, like I've noticed, one of my employees is working from home today. I've actually toyed with the idea of expanding the size of my footprint in the future, but as I've learned over the last 6 to 8 months, I'm not necessarily certain that's required anymore. And I'm curious to know whether or not that may actually hold true for the county. So I would like the idea of looking at trying to divest some of these assets that we have, not only just for the short-term revenue, but for the ongoing operation and maintenance reduction. We can transfer some of that cost. Thank you.
Matt Jones and Alan?
I just want to make sure this is clear. I wasn't asking for a motion to actually do this. I was looking, you're really just, hey, is it a favor of the board? Should I, discuss this with Chris further? Should we sit down and, all that? this is the very beginning. It takes more than, obviously this to really dive into it. I have to find out, any, issues that would come up from LEAP about moving and all that sort of stuff. I just threw that out there on the table. We do have 2 aging buildings up there in Hudson Falls, that wouldn't hurt my feelings not have to spend more money on them. My other concern is with this happening, moving board of elections over there, and if it is a few years before the nurses or a couple years or before we could possibly move public health over there, I mean, what are we doing with that building until then? It's housing 4 people, I guess, and my job, housing 4 people in a big building like that isn't the ideal situation. I'd want to be more efficient. That's why.
Well, from the county perspective, I agree with Chris that we bought that building for a reason, and there was a plan that the board supported at that time. And maybe more importantly, from the LEAP perspective, we're taking a building or 2 buildings that right now, even though there was a boiler replacement and an elevator replacement, they're not costing us very, very much money at all to maintain. And if I'm wrong, Matt, tell me, but I don't think there's enough square footage in that section of the building to move the classroom and the admin building into. So we're going to take, and remember that LEAP operates under a daycare license, which means you've got to renovate the building, get rid of the asbestos, and do the roof before you can move kids into that building. So we're going to spend $1 million, $1.5 million to renovate a building to avoid a building that's not costing us anything. I guess I'm not understanding the logic behind that.
Matt Jones?
We just talked about the roof and the hazmat and the whole asbestos thing anyways. That's something we're going to be doing, Al, whether we move them there or not. It's something, in order to keep the Burgoyne building, we have to do a roof. I mean, it's one of those things. If we're going to keep it and we're going to use it, we already have to do what you're asking. Yes, there will be some modifications, obviously, and I brought that forward. But those are the answers I want to, if there's no interest in doing this, then I'm not going to go into depth to find out what those costs are to bring them back. I'll stop today if there is no interest in doing it. And I completely agree that it is a change of direction of what our original goal was. And 20 years down the road, if we go to build the DPW barn or something, we may look back at this and say, hey, we should have, we shouldn't have done that. But at the same time, what are we doing in the meantime?
But I would also follow it up with, my conversations with the LEAP board and with Tracy. They are committed into working out some kind of solution with the county. They understand the need of having to divest from the 2 buildings at River Street and the Dix Avenue building. And they are committed to working with the county on a solution. But right now, if it was a whole Burgoyne Avenue building and it was already renovated, it would be a completely different conversation. But I think right now, you say you have to do the roof and the renovations and the asbestos abatement anyway, but you don't have to do it today because we're not moving anybody else in there. If you move somebody else in there, you got to do it right now. So I guess my fear is kind of what Brian brought up, is that some of that capital cost has been put on hold just due to our financial position.
Chris, explain something to me if you would. If you said if we moved Head Start over there, we would not be able to move any other departments. But under the plan of maybe having a county provided daycare over there, wouldn't that do the exact same thing? Why is it okay to consider that building for county daycare, but not yet Head Start that actually has a daycare license? Is one much, is what your idea of daycare a much smaller size room than what?
So the two things, likely the daycare would be a fraction of the building, right? The other thing is that in thinking back, I likely didn't stress this, and I should have, I apologize. My discussion of the daycare was never intended to be a permanent thing, right? So that was only while we were under kind of the confines of COVID and parents were really struggling with the uncertainty about school and the weird schedules that schools are in. So my thought was 18 months at the longest for something like that. My concern is if you move Head Start in there, you're never going to get them out. And we can't start to make any modifications to the campus until Annex 1 and Annex 2 are empty. So we needed the space in Burgoyne to move the departments out of Annex 1 and Annex 2 to then allow us to start to move and make some progress on the campus. That was my concern.
Thank you.
We're getting long on time. Getting a little long on time. I guess the question is, would be a consensus to have them at least look at this for now and come back with a firmly established numbers, figures, and different things that would be impacted, and maybe a sort of a plan, overall plan that we do this, not just based on moving LEAP and Head Start, but more about how it's going to impact the rest of the plans we have for that building?
I agree, Dave. I think, well, between Matt, Chris, and Al, they just came up with some very interesting points that I don't think, the way I just heard that, the daycare can even be there without the hazmat work done. Is that right?
I haven't gotten that far yet. I don't know.
Well,
asbestos in the roof doesn't matter. I don't know what the hazardous materials in the classrooms themselves are.
okay, so but that could be a problem too, so we kind of have to move forward for anything with that part.
Not necessarily.
Because, well, if it's there though, it would stop anything.
No.
What's the pleasure of the committee? Have them move forward, look at this as a potential option or not? I agree, just making one decision on this today isn't.
Well, no, but I think if Matt doesn't move forward, you're not any better off. You've still got to do the investigation into the hazardous materials and all that, right?
We already approved that. We're doing the testing and the engineering for the removal, which is separate from actually removing it. First, we need to know what's there and what it'll take to get rid of it. That you guys already voted on, you moved it to finance. If all goes according to plan, you'll appropriate the money for it in September and we'll go on our merry way. So that's already underway.
Al?
Dave, can a small group of us, like me, Matt, Chris, and maybe even somebody from LEAP, get together and report back to you next month with a more cohesive plan?
Fine with me. Fair. Okay. Next on the agenda, anything else, Matt?
Yep, just quick, update on the law enforcement center. We had a generator failure down there. Right now down there, there's one we're actually renting until we can get the other one fixed. So that was a costly, breakdown, is roughly $60,000 breakdown in that generator down there. So that happened in the last month. We are on fixing it. I guess if there's any questions, that was more of just an update. We're in the middle of it. The next thing is when the COVID happened and we shut down out here, we had a job to replace 2 rooftops at the law center out to bid at the time. I pulled that bid off the, off the street. So we just stopped it. We said, nope. I said, I can't do walkthroughs. I can't do anything else. We don't know what's going on. We already had paid for the engineering. So I'm still holding all that. Is it something we're going to want to go back out to bid for again? Or is this one of those jobs that, do we want it to go on the back burner? the approximate, cost to replace those two, I think was like 500,000. Obviously, we're going out to bid to get more concrete numbers, but I'm looking for, a feeling there. It was a capital plan project that I just pulled off. So I'm throwing that out there, see where we're at there.
Could we reevaluate that at budget time? Chris, is there any?
It is budget time.
Well, yes, but we haven't started yet.
But if you were gonna put it out to bid, is that what, Matt, you want to put that out to bid, is that where you were at?
I'm looking to just get guidance. I don't need to put it back out to bid right now because it would be probably at this time of, it would be a next year project anyways. But more of this is, here it is, I pull it off, we're sitting on it. We don't have to do anything with it right now. I understand the, constraints and the budget time. So if you want me to just hold, I also don't want to hold onto this stuff and have everybody think we're doing the project either. We're moving forward with it. So I'm just leaving it out there for direction. Just hold it. That's a good answer with me if that's what you want.
Input, just hold it at this point? Okay, anything else, Matt?
That's all I got.
Any other business come before the committee? Motion to adjourn? Brian, do I have a second? Paul?
The committee.
All in favor? Adjourned.
Chris, I appreciate you spending the time to put your survey